Hello, we're here tonight to talk about what is a trauma bond. So, if you're like me, I'd heard the term, but it really didn't resonate with me. I didn't have anything to really connect it to. But one time it finally made sense to me. If your initial introduction to a trauma bond is in terms of narcissism, it may not connect. A trauma bond, when you hear that term for the first time, I heard it in terms of narcissism. But a trauma bond is often, I'll put it like this, a trauma bond is not only, it's not only used in terms of romantic relationships. A trauma bond could be used in friendships, it could be used in a parent child relationship. It is a pattern where you have abuse followed by positive reinforcement. So let me give an example. It could be with a friendship. Let's say that you have a friend and there has been a pattern of abuse or abuse has been inserted into the relationship. So let's say that the friend has done something that was abusive in nature and then followed that up by something that was that felt really good. So let me say that the friend um, was very malicious in how they treated the other friend, and then followed that up by a very warm, loving treatment. Not only would the first abusive pattern feel hurtful, but the loving pattern would feel good. So it would leave the victim feeling confused. And that is part of what it creates a push pull in the relationship. And if you are in a family dynamic, if there has been a pattern of this over time, you have been taught that that is what love looks like. The problem or the interesting part about a trauma bond is if that is what the if that is a pattern that you have grown accustomed to, if that is what you have been taught that love looks like, you don't know how to distinguish between love and a trauma bond. You have been introduced to love in the form of a trauma bond. So when you are introduced to romantic relationships and they come and they look like a trauma bond, you cannot distinguish between love. You cannot distinguish between a healthy relationship and a trauma bond because you were introduced to romantic relationships that feel very familiar to your family patterns because your family patterns were actually trauma bonds. Let me give another example. If your family pattern was to have someone, and let me say this as well. It is very common in trauma bonds for there to be a pattern of power imbalance, for there to be a power imbalance in that trauma bond. So it would not be uncommon for a parent to have abusive patterns and then follow that abuse by rewarding a child or showering the child with gifts or love or affection. So let's say that the parent was physically abusive and then followed that physical abuse up with gifts or affection. The physical abuse would be painful, but if you immediately followed that physical abuse with hugs or treats or gifts, that child has established a pattern in their mind that, well, my parent loves me because they hug me afterwards. So I was loved. And if you think about the bell hooks definition, love and abuse cannot coexist. When I read her book, it really was freeing to me. Love and abuse cannot coexist. And I just kept reading those lines. Love and abuse cannot coexist. Love and abuse cannot coexist. So, no matter what your early family patterns were, no matter how much you've been told that your early um, family patterns, no matter how much you have been conditioned to think that your family patterns were loving, if there was abuse that was present, that was not love. That was a trauma bond. And if you grew up with trauma bonds, it conditioned you to accept trauma bonds in romantic relationships. So sit there for a moment, process that, because if you were conditioned to accept trauma bonds in family patterns, you are more likely to accept them in friendships, you are more likely to accept them in romantic relationships. It's okay. Give yourself grace, but that doesn't mean you have to accept them moving forward. You are worthy. You are worthy of love. You are worthy of healthy love. Real love, real love, healthy love does not coexist with abuse. Let me say that again. Love and abuse do not coexist. Love and abuse do not coexist. Love does not have abuse inside of it. You don't have to tolerate abuse of any type, verbal or physical. And so we'll just sit that right there. If you have tolerated abuse in the past, that does not mean you have to tolerate abuse moving forward. So, again, I'm your aunt. You can consider me, if you don't have a physical aunt, I'm your virtual aunt, your surrogate aunt, and I'm here to give you the love that maybe your real family could not. But I want you to know that you are worthy of love. You are worthy of real love. You deserve love, and I want you to have all of the love that you deserve. Peace out.